Antarctica, the world's southernmost and fifth largest continent. Its landmass is almost wholly covered by a vast ice sheet. Often described as a continent of superlatives, Antarctica is not only the world's southernmost continent. It is also the world's highest, driest, windiest, coldest, and iciest continent. Antarctica is about 5.5 million square miles, 14.2 million square kilometers, in size, and thick ice covers about 98% of the land. Lying almost concentrically around the South Pole, Antarctica's name means opposite to the Arctic. It would be essentially circular except for the outflaring Antarctic Peninsula, which reaches toward the southern tip of South America, some 600 miles, 970 kilometers, away, and for two principal embayments, the Ross Sea and the Weddell Sea. These deep embayments of the Southern Ocean make the continent somewhat pear-shaped, dividing it into two unequal-sized parts. The continental ice sheet contains approximately 7 million cubic miles, about 29 million cubic km, of ice, representing about 90% of the world's ice and 80% of its fresh water. Its average thickness is about 5,900 feet, 1,800 meters. Ice shelves, or ice sheets floating on the sea, cover many parts of the Ross and Weddell Seas. These shelves, the Ross Ice Shelf and the Filchner Ice Shelf, together with other shelves around the continental margins, fringe about 45% of Antarctica. Around the Antarctic coast, shelves, glaciers, and ice sheets continually calve or discharge icebergs into the seas. From the late 18th to the mid-20th century, whalers and sealers plied the rich seas that surround the continent. Science then replaced whaling and sealing as the primary year-round human activity in Antarctica. In addition, krill harvesting and other types of commercial fishing in the Southern Ocean expanded from the 1960s onwards. The new millennium saw tourism and, to a lesser extent, biological prospecting, the search for useful chemical compounds and genes in local species, become established sectors of the Antarctic economic landscape. Documentation for the theory was not discovered until 1982, when the first mammal remains, a marsupial fossil, were found on Seymour Island in the Weddell Sea. The subsequent growth of Antarctica's ice sheets cut off any further migrations by land animals. Now bathed by polar ice, Antarctica has abundant fossil evidence that its climate and terrain at one time supported far more populous flora and fauna than today's few seedless plants and primitive insects. Much of Antarctica was densely forested in Mesozoic times, about 252 million to 66 million years ago, dominated by southern conifers of podocarps and araucarias, with undergrowth of rainforest-type ferns. Angiosperm trees, particularly the southern beech, Nothofagus, appeared during the Cretaceous period, about 145 million to 66 million years ago. According to some scientists, the discovery of Nothofagus pollen in the transantarctic mountains that dates to approximately 3 million years ago suggests that Nothofagus may have lingered as Antarctica drifted poleward, cooled, and became glaciated. Remains of luxuriant extinct floras, as well as fossils of Mesozoic reptiles, dinosaurs, and amphibians, have been discovered, and these compare so closely to those of other southern continents that many geologists have postulated former contiguity of these lands in a single giant continent called Gondwana. Continental stratigraphic evidence and the dating of seafloors seem to indicate that the supercontinent broke apart along Jurassic Rift faults 180 million to 160 million years ago, and that fragments such as Africa and Australia separated from Antarctica in Jurassic to Cretaceous time, about 201 million to 66 million years ago, and in the early Cenozoic era.